Hello ladies and gentlemen, my name's Tom DiNardo, the original Wine Zealot. Welcome to another episode of the Wine Zealot on Tour. Today, we're visiting Stonington Vineyards here in beautiful Stonington, Connecticut. Ladies and gentlemen, again, my name is Tom DiNardo. I am the original Wine Zealot, a certified sommelier, and today we are in Stonington Vineyards in beautiful Stonington, Connecticut, and I have the wonderful pleasure of sampling the Stonington Vineyards Triad Rosé. We're here today with Happy Smith, who is the owner and proprietor of Stonington Vineyards, and what we're trying right now is the Triad Rosé, which is made with Cabernet Franc, Vidal Blanc, and Chardonnay. Now, Cabernet Franc and Chardonnay, of course, are French grape varietals, and then we have Vidal Blanc, which is actually a hybrid. And we were just discussing this wine. This wine, the Triad Rosé, has wonderful, wonderful aromatics. And Happy was saying that what she likes most about it is what?
Oh, I think the finish is what I can finish a lot of this wine.
Now I'm in agreement with you. You're absolutely right. The finish is incredibly long. So what I find also when I taste this is that there's, in the wine industry, as we both know, every palate is different. So initially, you almost get, myself as a sommelier and wine expert, I mean, initially I thought, oh, maybe this wine is a little bit sweet, but it's actually not sweet. What this wine is it's fruit forward. And the difference between sweet and fruit forward is you have all the wonderful flavors of the fruit and a compelling sweetness, but it's not really sweet. It's actually just off dry. And that contributes to the incredibly long finish that Happy's talking about, which I can understand why this is an award-winning wine, because it is just absolutely beautiful from the beginning through the middle and the finish of the wine. The wine has a wonderful mouthfeel or viscosity. It's, again, just off dry. And again, the finish, it's been a minute and a half or 2 minutes since it's actually passed through my palate, down my throat, and I can still taste the wine, which again, as we say in the profession, we call that the finish. This is an absolutely extraordinary wine. You must be very proud of it.
Well, you must find the wines here very different in California.
Forget California. We're in Connecticut. And we're highlighting your wines. And Connecticut wine or not, this is very much made in the old world style. It's very French. Yes, very, very, very French. And as I told you, I'm actually very partial to rosés. And rosés happen to be one of my favorite. And to me, this is very, very much done in the French style. And I think this is extraordinary. Today we're trying the 2014 Stonington Vineyards Cabernet Franc. This particular red wine varietal, for those of you who are familiar with Cabernet Franc, you might be aware that Cabernet Franc is often used as a blending grape in our wonderful French Bordeaux that come from our friends in France. This particular wine has been aged in oak for 2 years. It's 100% Cabernet Franc, another one of my favorite grape varietals. What I particularly like about the nose is you have wonderful aromas of blackcurrant and cherry, a little bit of licorice in the background, some cocoa, and slight notes of tobacco. It's a very light mouthfeel, very much done in old world style, typical of France. It's a young wine because obviously this is a 2014, so it's a little higher in tannins, but the tannins aren't harsh. And for those of you who don't know what tannins are basically what comes from the peel of the grape. So when we talk about tannins basically are what produces the color in a red wine, again coming from the peel of the grape, and also tannins, for those who appreciate wine, or for those of you who may not appreciate wine, that initial bitter flavor that you get from a wine comes actually from the tannin. And this is not, again, particularly bitter. It is tannic because it's young. But the beautiful thing, again, about a red wine is once you open a red wine, how it initially appears after you pour it will change 15 minutes later, then a half an hour later, and an hour later. So sometimes what people will do, especially when they drink a red wine, is they'll decant the wine first. And decant means basically pour it into a glass or a decanting container. So now it's been about a minute since I tasted the wine. This has wonderful flavors again of black currant, cherry in particular black in the background. It's got a wonderfully long finish on it. The finish again is the residual flavors of the wine that stay on your palate after you've consumed it. So this is the latest vintage of Stonington Vineyards Cabernet Franc and a wonderful example of Cabernet Franc. The last and perhaps the best wine that we're going to be trying today from Stonington Vineyards is the 2013 Reserve Cabernet Franc. And the reason why this was declared a Reserve Cabernet is that they had a limited growth and they stored this particular wine for 2 years in oak prior to it being bottled in 2016. Unlike the previous Cabernet Franc that we tried, the 2014 vintage, this was a much more limited production. The first thing that I notice on the nose of the Reserve Cabernet Franc, unlike the 2014 vintage, is that there's much more of a mature quality on the nose. You still get the wonderful aromas of black cherry, black currant, tobacco, and cocoa, more so cocoa than on the previous vintage. So it has a wonderfully developed nose. So the palate of this particular wine is comprised of cocoa, some notes of dark chocolate, tobacco, a little bit of licorice, but the licorice is more in the background, unlike the previous vintage. The wine also, the tannins are much more elegant and softer than the previous vintage, the 2014 that we tasted. The finish on this is also extraordinarily long. This is a classic textbook example of Cabernet Franc and one of my favorites. Cheers.